together. Instead, Donald Trump is abusing the power by trying to take away birthright citizenship. This is blatantly unconstitutional, evident by actions taken now by 22 attorneys general in cities across the country. Simply put, it's un-American to attempt to invalidate our immigrant contributions and histories, but let me be clear. Immigrants make America great, and immigrants help keep America's economy moving. As progressives, we are here to say that we will not let him take away this fundamental right. And on his quest to invalidate immigrants and dehumanize us, Trump has also suspended refugee resettlements, a program that's existed since the 1980s, offering a lifeline to refugees in the most dire conditions. And as if it weren't enough, Trump wants to completely dismantle the right to seek asylum by reinstating the Remain in Mexico policy. This deterrent policy is inhumane, ineffective, and places people in grave harm. And under the guise of public safety, he intends to stop cartels by categorizing them as terrorists. This vilification of immigrants, and in particular Mexicans, will lead us down a dangerous path, one that creates even more harm and jeopardizes our national security. From preying on victims of extortion to opening the door to military interventions in Mexico, we must understand the serious implications of declaring cartels as terrorist organizations. Let's set the record straight. If Trump really wants to address cartel violence, then he must address the fact that 70% of weapons used by the cartels are coming from the U.S. And while we're fact-checking, let's debunk the myth that immigrants are criminals. Immigrants are actually 60% less likely to be incarcerated and 37% less to commit crimes. We stand here today calling on Trump to bring real solutions, not propaganda, to stoke fear and chaos disguised as policies. We will not be silenced. We will not be afraid. We will defend our diverse immigrant communities and reaffirm that the more you try to bury us, the stronger that we will grow back. Thank you. Next, I'd like to introduce Representative Mark Pocan from Wisconsin.
Thank you, Chewy. The Progressive Caucus is ready to be the resistance and lead the resistance in this Congress and hold the Republicans accountable for what they promised the American people in November. I'm going to talk specifically around costs of goods in the economy as well as the LGBTQI plus community. On day one, Donald Trump promised he was going to lower costs for Americans, and he didn't. In fact, some of the actions he did will actually increase costs for Americans. Republicans, we're in our officially fourth week of the 119th Congress, and we still have not seen a bill that's going to lower costs for Americans. Here's what is happening. If the president does tariffs on all goods coming in, he's going to increase costs for Americans. Now, there's a useful time to have tariffs. When they were having cheap steel go into the United States, putting tariffs on that protects workers here in America. But blanket tariffs do just the opposite. And those tariffs that he could do could actually drive our grocery prices even higher. On gas and energy costs, by him pausing investments in the infrastructure bill, by him halting all of the funding for the Inflation Reduction Act, that would have real-life ramifications on jobs. The 400,000 good family-supporting wages that were created by those jobs from those bills. On housing, nothing, crickets. We've yet to see anything from this president, and we know people are having a hard time affording rent and their mortgages during this economy. We want to see us raise the minimum wage. We want to make child care more affordable. We want to ensure quality, affordable health care for everyone. We want to lower those costs that I just talked about of groceries and gas and housing, and we want to drive down costs in other areas as well. specifically for the LGBTQIA plus community, this is going to be a tough Congress. I spent Monday not here at the inaugural. I spent it in service for Martin Luther King Jr. Day by meeting with different communities. One of those communities was the LGBT community in my district, and talking to folks about what they're afraid about and watching those initial executive orders that instantly is going to attack people, certain people within the community. Those are initiatives we're going to fight for respect and equality for everyone. Those attacks on DEI initiatives are going to affect our community and other communities, and we want people to know that we respect everyone. We want equality for everyone, and that's what the Progressive Caucus is going to fight for in our time here. And with that, I'm going to introduce next from the great state of Pennsylvania, Representative Chris DeLuzio.
Thank you, Congressman Pocan. Hello, everybody. I believe in something pretty straightforward about the American dream. You work hard, you play by the rules, you got to have a shot at it. And folks are angry, right? They're working hard. Costs are too high. Housing, groceries, you name it. The corporate stranglehold on our economy, we're feeling it all over this country. You name a sector, there's probably consolidation that's driving up costs, that's screwing over small businesses, that's hurting workers. Mr. Pocan just said it. We're in the third week of the Republican majority in the House and the Senate, this Congress. They've done nothing to bring down costs. They've done nothing to break the corporate stranglehold on our economy, and they're not going to, because they do the bidding of their corporate bosses here in Washington. They care about one thing, juicing their profits. I'm from Western Pennsylvania. We know what it is to see an ideology of only profits matter. They matter. So do our jobs. So does our safety. So does our dignity. So does this country. Places all over this country understand that history, where they were plotted to strip for their parts. Places like the Rust Belt understand this story, this history. To make life less of a ripoff, we need more competition. We have to take on monopolies, break that corporate stranglehold. Republicans, and President Obama talked about this, there could be an asteroid coming for planet Earth. They'd get in a room, you know what their plan would be? Tax giveaways to billionaires. That is the only economic program they have. Trickle-down economics has never worked for America. It's never worked for Western Pennsylvania. Where I come from, it's a place people love this country. They're patriotic. They support those who try to defend us. People like the Capitol Police who defended this building, who were brutally attacked that day. I'll give an example from my neck of the woods. A gentleman named Jordan Mink, convicted of assaulting officers with a pole, spitting on them, throwing stuff at them, convicted of theft, aiding and abetting for smashing a Capitol window and more, sentenced to 4 years in prison. He's got a pardon now. As the opposite of public safety. It is the opposite of law and order. And these people are going to walk free because of Donald Trump's pardon. People are disgusted by it. My constituents are disgusted by it. I am disgusted by it. It won't distract us from our work to make life better for people, to restore the American dream, to bring down costs, defend our freedom. We'll find common ground. I'll find common ground with this president or anyone else. But if they're going to hurt my people, our people, we are going to fight. Make no mistake about that. Thank you. And with that, I'll turn it over to the gentlelady from California, Congressman Rivas. Where'd you go? There you are.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. DeLuzio, for yielding to me, and thank you, Chair Kassar, for your leadership of our caucus. I want to start by thanking the firefighters and first responders from across the country who have been working nonstop to put out the fires in Southern California. Our hearts also go out to those who lost their lives and livelihoods as a result of these wildfires. I visited some of the burn sites with my colleagues where we saw the destruction to homes, businesses, and community centers firsthand. It looks like a war zone out there. What we saw and what we hear from our constituents has made it clear that our communities need federal disaster aid quickly and now without any conditions attached. Natural disasters do not discriminate between red and blue. They impact everyone just the same, and it's not fair to keep anybody waiting for aid that they need to recover. I hope Speaker Johnson and House Republicans do not break historical precedent just to score quick political points or to please the president. We all need to come together to deliver federal aid to our constituents without any conditions attached so that they can rebuild their lives in the wake of this disaster. Thank you, and I yield back to Chair Kassar.
Thank you, Luz.
We'll now take questions here from the press. Please say your name and your outlet, and I may hand it off to members. You'll indicate to me if you're interested in taking the question, and then after that, we want to do some breakouts with folks that weren't able to speak here at the podium today. Go ahead.
Catherine Swartz with Notice. Wanted to ask particularly on immigration. This Congress, we've seen 2 bills, the Laken-Riley Act and the Violence Against Women by Illegal Aliens Act, and we've seen a split among the Democratic caucus on these 2. Particularly a lot of new Democratic members, freshmen coming in that are voting for both of these bills. Just wondering from the CPC perspective, does it concern you that there is this divide in the caucus when it comes to these immigration bills?
The Progressive Caucus is united in having an immigration system that works for people, that is humane, that is legal, and that is orderly. And Republicans in this building, in this city, for decades have undermined that goal every single day. And so we are united in that vision. The bills you just described don't do anything to make people safer or to fix our immigration system. And so our goal as a Progressive Caucus is to recognize that many of these Republican bills are intended to divide the American people and to try to put frontline Democratic members in a difficult place. And the way that I think the Progressive Caucus and the progressive movement in this country can help is by telling the truth. As Whip Garcia just mentioned, that immigrants in this country not only contribute, they are much less likely to commit crime than somebody like me that is born here. To tell the truth that these bills, in fact, don't protect victims of violence. In fact, they could lead to the deportation and punishment of victims of violence. But I also recognize, and I think the Progressive Caucus also recognizes, that so many of our members right now are having to vote in an information environment flooded with lies. And so the Progressive Caucus is committed to getting the truth out there so that all of our members can unite not just around our goals, but start uniting around a strategy to push back against Republican bills that really don't help and, in fact, can hurt many of the communities that Americans want to protect.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Michael Jones, Once Upon a Hill. Today is the 52nd anniversary of, well, it would have been the 52nd anniversary of Roe. Didn't hear any mention of reproductive freedom or Roe versus Wade. Where does reproductive freedom fit into this argument? How important is it for the Progressive Caucus to continue to speak about the intersection between reproductive freedom and the economy, reproductive freedom, diversity, equity, and inclusion? Where does reproductive freedom fit in, especially on a day like today?
Extremely high priority, but happy to hand the question over if somebody else wants to take one. Somebody want to take it? Go ahead.
I think there's no question that reproductive rights are freedom to the are fundamental to the Progressive Caucus. I'm from Arizona, representing a state where we just saw abortion rights being enshrined in our state constitution at the same time that Donald Trump was elected as president. I think this goes to show that Americans, despite their political party preference, believe that women in this country should have access to reproductive rights, reproductive health care, and these are incredibly important. And all we are seeing from the Republican Party is a continued push to take away these freedoms and move us closer towards a national abortion ban. So I personally am very concerned. I know our caucus and the entire Democratic caucus is deeply concerned about this issue, and we will undoubtedly continue to fight for it.
Congressman Pocan, Dave Weigel from Senate 4, Congressman Pocan spoke to the attack on DEI, but I've heard less from Democrats the last 24 hours about the orders rolling back, not just DEI, but rolling back affirmative action protections, including LBJ's affirmative action order. I wondered what the caucus's strategy was on that and what the effect you thought these changes would have on the country.
I mean, it's incredibly alarming. We as a country strive to create a more equitable space for everyone. I think the misinformation and disinformation on what DEI hire is has been that there's an individual hired because of their diversity, and many of these positions are positions in which the person is responsible for diversifying the workplace, for recruitment, for retention, for creating a space that is welcoming for everyone. And it is unfortunate at this moment, as they are suspended with pay, that we are paying people not to work. And I think to have tax dollars go out to individuals who are actually not doing work at this moment does the opposite of efficiency. When they talk about creating a more efficient workplace, that is what DEI hires essentially do. These people that are in these positions are trying to create an environment where the most efficient people for the job are hired. And so we're going to do everything that we can, again, to fight against the misinformation that is out there by putting out the correct information on what these titles actually means, what diversity, equity, inclusion actually stands for, and what kind of jobs are going to be lost, and how that's going to impact the workplace in this country.
About the energy and climate strategy, what would the CPC like to see on that front beyond messaging? What are the actual, actions, concrete things that you and your offices can do, from the office level, committee level, on the floor to put back?
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Melanie Stansbury, and I serve on the Natural Resources Committee and am the newly minted subcommittee ranking member for the DOGE subcommittee. So to address this question on energy and environment specifically, we are going to fight back against Donald Trump's anti-climate and anti-environmental agenda. On his first day in office, he outlined an energy emergency. What Americans need to understand is that we have the highest level of oil and gas drilling, not only in the history of the United States, but of any country on the planet right now. And in spite of that, Donald Trump issued a series of executive orders that roll back our commitments under the Paris Climate Accords, that roll back everything that we've done under the Inflation Reduction Act to address our climate emissions. They've rolled back protections for the Outer Continental Shelf and public lands across America. This is not about spurring energy security in America. It's about giving billionaires and millionaires and multinational oil and gas companies kickbacks for their campaign donations. I think it's important for folks to remember that Donald Trump literally invited oil and gas executives to Mar-a-Lago just a few months ago and actively solicited $1 billion in campaign donations in exchange for removing us from the Paris Accords, as well as basically destroying the clean energy initiatives that the Biden administration did. And guess what? Donald Trump delivered on day one. Our job as the Progressive Caucus is to fight back against these pushbacks, to make sure that we're protecting our public lands, our waters, we're protecting the fundamental environmental laws that have made it possible for this country and our people to thrive, to protect the public health, and to make sure that we're protecting the planet. So the specific actions, we're going to make sure that we fight back against the anti-climate agenda. I think there's a lot of interest in engaging internationally with non-state actors who also have a role, as well as to the extent that Congress can, to protect our international agreements. Most of the private sector, including the oil and gas industry, would like to have the international standards for the Paris Accords remain in place. We will continue in the Natural Resources Committee to push back against any and all assaults on the National Environmental Policy Act and the Clean Air and Clean Water Acts and the Endangered Species Act. And we're going to continue to use the platforms that we have to make the American people aware at every moment that it comes about what the Trump administration is up to. So those are some of the things that we're going to do, and I will turn it back.
I think we'll take one more, and then we'll we'll all be available to sort of do individual interviews. Go ahead.
It's so tough because obviously there's been a lot of action from the Trump administration, a lot of executive orders, a lot of less sleep reading them. But I wanted to ask about refugees in particular, because that's something close to your caucus, and we have a former refugee here right now. What do you think about the Trump's, if we don't know, indefinite ban on refugee admissions in that program? What does that mean? And what are you hearing about that from the constituents?
Well, my understanding is that it's a 90-day pause for them to examine. We also know that there's a reinstatement of what essentially will become the Muslim ban, as he's directed the Attorney General to look at identifying countries for that ban. You know, I came here on the refugee resettlement program. It is one of the most vetted programs that are out there to bring immigrants into this country. I have constituents who have been waiting, especially Afghani constituents who've been waiting to be reunited with their family members. These are people who've risked their lives and put their families in danger in order to help with our country's war in Afghanistan. And so to abandon them really does go against what we say we stand for. If you have our back, we'll have your back. Is essentially what we would want the understanding to be, and it's unfortunate. And you have to think about the refugees are one of the most harmed immigrants in the world. They're oftentimes people who have survived war and severe displacement. There is a reason why they have a special status. And so I do hope that they do reconsider and allow the hundreds of thousands of people whose lives are now in limbo, who've gone through the vetting process, we're just waiting for the visas and their relocation to this country to take place, for that to be reassumed. With that, thank you all.
Thank you all very much. Please, especially because I know Congresswoman Schakowsky and Congresswoman Dexter were up at the podium. Please pull them aside and ask them and all of us questions. We still have the room for another half hour. And I do think one thing that brings all of us together, to your point, is that Donald Trump is trying to flood the news with everything that he can. And of course, the Progressive Caucus is going to be defending refugees, is going to defend our people and our planet. But Trump doesn't want to be held accountable for his most egregious actions that he took here in the last couple of days. And we're also going to make sure every single day that the American people are reminded of his pardons for those people who are convicted for assaulting police officers. We're going to remind the American people regularly about his actions that he just took to say they're going to target more immigrants for deportation who have no criminal conviction at all. We're going to make sure that the American people are reminded about Donald Trump's action just a couple of days ago to raise prices for medication for Americans. I mean, he signed an executive order repealing our protections for Americans, and he's trying to jack up prices of pharmaceuticals for big pharma. And so he is trying to flood the news with all of these actions. We're going to hold him accountable and defend the vulnerable, but the Progressive Caucus won't just be caught on the back foot on defense. We will continue to go on offense. And we urge everyone here to not let him get away with flooding the zone with so much that he's able to get away with doing the bidding of his billionaire donors.